So I'm not at all sure if people in the audience know. How many people know what community solar is? Pretty much all of you, but I've got a really quick explanation. It's done simply with this slide that basically shows a solar array on the side of a hill with the indication that Scott and Alex Kendrick own some collectors in there, and DBS Helicopter Company owns this row there, and whatever. This is what community solar is. It's the idea that maybe a community could own a solar array, that everybody could pool their money together and build a large solar array, and everybody owns shares in that solar array. It's not built on your home. It's not in your yard. It's in an ideal sunny location. It's built and operated by a professional that knows how to do that. You don't worry about tax credits or anything like that. You don't worry about what kind of a building permits you need or anything else. You just buy a few solar collectors like Clark's Market did there. Then what you get is money back from the energy produced from the collectors that you own as part of this community solar array. This is not a new concept anymore. At one time it was. It is no longer. In fact, it's a concept that started out way back around 2010 and has been growing ever since. And as you can see on this graph, growing really rapidly in the last few years, this idea that, hey, maybe we can all, even if you're an apartment dweller, even if your business is in the shade or whatever, but you'd still like to tell your customers that you're operating on solar energy, a community solar project, invest in that, and you can do that. So this slide shows the growth of community solar, and it's actually a megawatt hours of production ability, and it shows it really take off after about 2015. And the reason for that has to do with a few states that really got behind some policies and whatever to get it started. But as you can see, the growth has been very dynamic, and they've started, and this is a new one, they've just started breaking the graph up, and now they have third-party led and utility led, because what we're starting to see is not just neighborhood groups getting together to do this or whatever, but your utility company putting this together and then making an offer to you to have a share in the community solar. So what I'm going to do first is just quickly go through what's been happening in Michigan in community solar. And that started out a while ago right here in Traverse City with Traverse City Light and Power in Cherryland. Yeah, sorry, panel, you can't see the slides. With the Solar Up North Alliance, it was called. It was 52.6 kilowatts. It started out being a third of that size, but they had such demand that they grew it to 52.6 kilowatts community solar that was available to any customers of Cherryland or Traverse City Light and Power. The second one was even smaller than that, a 24 kW community solar. Also done, this was done by Homeworks, which is a rural electric co-op, runs kind of west of Mount Pleasant and north for about 50 to 100 miles, and they built a phase one with room to build more. Both of these sold out pretty quickly. Eventually, the next one really was Consumers Energy, started a solar garden program. They did this because demand, I would say, from their customers to say, would you do this? And so they went to the Public Service Commission and proposed a pilot program to do a community solar program. And this is what it looks like. Basically, this is all off of their website. Pay a low monthly fee on your electric bill each month and receive a monthly solar energy credit based on the amount of energy you produce. A lot of critical things in solar. Well, what is your first payment going to be? How much are you going to buy a whole collector? Or are you going to buy a certain 200 kilowatts of output? How's it going to work? They're all a little bit different. Also, part of that is what are they going to pay you for the energy produced? For this one, for the first 5 years of the program, Consumers Energy will pay you 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour for all of the energy produced from your solar. Now, let's see, I'm paying Consumers Energy about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So this is not net metering by any means. It's not them paying you what you're paying them, But it's 7.5 cents a kilowatt for the first 5 years, and then year 6 on, it'll follow the market, which generally, since electric prices in Michigan have done nothing but go up, means that you'll get paid more than that after the first 5 years. And they have actually built 2 different solar arrays, one at Grand Valley State University, 11,200 solar panels, 3 megawatts of power that was completed in April of 2016, and a second one at Western Michigan University that was 3,900 solar panels that was 1 megawatt of power. This is what they've done. They've got permission from the public, Michigan Public Utilities to build up to 10 megawatts if there's demand for it. A new one that's just coming online is done by the Board and Water and Light of Lansing Board and Water and Light. They call it the My Community Solar, or Michigan Community Solar. This one will have 1,000 solar panels, each rated at 300 watts, and it's going to be 300 kilowatts in size. Another one that I think Zach's going to talk about is the Spartan Solar. It's 1,200 kilowatts, so that's 1.2 megawatts of solar and open to a number of different co-ops and municipals around the state. I bought a share in the Consumers Energy Community Solar Garden Program. And this is my welcome letter. You know, you're on your way to supporting Michigan-made solar energy. In the next 2 weeks, you're going to get, a bunch of information. Your electric bill's going to change a little bit. And so this is what my electric bill looked like. You can see down there under electric charges, what I did was I bought the cheapest share. I pay $10 a month for a share of community solar from them, and then I get the output of electricity from that share at their 7.5 cents a kilowatt. So this is a typical month. Just of interest on the top there, it's got on-peak, off-peak, and that's part of my bill, and I have that because I have an electric car and I get on-peak and off-peak pricing so I can charge my car at night. But below that is 2 new lines. One is solar energy subscription, $10 every month, $10. Solar energy credit in this month was $4.75, meaning I'm paying an extra $5.25 to be a member of their community solar program. All right, so I've been in it for a year, and this is what it's looked like for me. Under the charge, $10, $10, $10, $10, that never changes for as long as I'm in the program. The credits themselves, $4, $7, $5, down to a low of 68 cents in February, is how much solar energy my share of collectors made at 7.5 cents a quart. So over the course of a year, I paid $120 and I got $53.73 worth of credit, meaning that I paid $66.27, which is basically like paying an extra 9.3 cents a kilowatt hour for all of this energy. It's not a great deal. And in fact, in this particular case, this is a graph of how much I paid over that year. So the costs are less in the summer months and more in the winter months. That's typical. But I'm paying for green energy. I'm paying an extra 9.3 cents a kilowatt hour to belong in this program. Well, Consumers had a green energy generation program that was based on wind energy and biomass that I could get $1.50 for 150 kilowatt blocks, which was basically 1 cent per kilowatt hour for green energy. Yes?
I could cynically interpret this as a negative solar public relations.
No, I'm hoping Consumers is here because here's the point. I bought the cheap one. I bought $10. They have 4 different ways of buying into this program. One, you could pay up front. One you could pay over 7 years, one you could pay over 5 years, whatever, and this one. This one never pays for itself. It's not the way to do it. if you were to pay a bunch up front, and I've got a slide to talk about that later, we'll go through all of this and all of these programs and the economics of every one of them before we leave today. But I'm just showing you this, and I'm saying, well, gee whiz, if I can pay a cent and get green energy, why would I pay 9 cents? I don't see a big difference there. DTE had a green currents program that they just ended a little while ago that was 100 kW for $2.50 or 2.5 cents a kilowatt. That still beats my 9 cents. DTE's new program that they just announced, that you heard about from Dave Harwell earlier today, when you do the math on that one, it ends up to be about 4.1 cents a kilowatt hour. So they're not getting better on these pricings. And for these green power programs they're offering you, that's just pay a little bit extra so that you can say you're buying green energy and you're supporting the utility, you're giving the utility extra money. This was never the intent of community solar. Community solar was meant to be an investment that you make that displaces some of the electricity off your bill and over time actually pays for itself. And you will see in some of the other programs that happens. This is where I'm going to stop. We're going to walk through this slide, and this slide is going to cover every one of these programs, how big they are, how much you pay for them, what do you get for your money, how long it takes to pay them, whatever, but we're not going to do that now. We're going to move on and let Zach talk about the program that they've just done. Oh, I got to introduce Zach. That's right. Because we're really lucky to have Zach. I'm going to tell you, Zach is the Vice President of Power Supply from Wolverine Power Company, which really was kind of the backer for the first Cherryland Traverse City community solar that happened back then. He's been working for Wolverine since 2011. His background includes power supply, portfolio management, fuel and power contract negotiations, long-term pricing and cost analysis, and generation and market operations on the larger transmission systems, which means that Zach really knows the nuts and bolts of how to make these programs work and pay for themselves. He has a Bachelor of Science in History from Northern State University out of Aberdeen, South Dakota, and he's currently pursuing a master's in business from Western Michigan. He is a South Dakota native who now lives in Cadillac with his wife Cassandra, his daughter Amelia, and his son Alexander.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the introduction. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you today about what Wolverine and our members are doing in the renewable and community solar space. A little bit of background on who Wolverine is. So we are Michigan's generation and transmission electric cooperative. So if you're familiar with electric cooperatives, we're not for profit. If we make a margin, it's eventually retired in capital credits. We retired $15 million in capital credits back to our members. Cherryland right here in the community is one of those members. The 5 others are Homeworks Tri-County, Midwest Energy Cooperative, Great Lakes Energy, and Presqu'Île Gas and Electric. And so between Cherryland and Homeworks, and now with our new community solar array, our members had the first 2 in the state, and now we have one of the largest in the state and certainly the largest community solar arrays in northern Michigan. Part of my job is the rest of our portfolio. We have 1,000 megawatts of natural gas, primarily peaking generation around the state in the lower peninsula, that is. And then we do have coal and 210 megawatts of renewables, which we're very, very excited about. We'll be about 20% renewable this year, well ahead of the current RPS mandate of 10% and the coming increase to 15%. So we see days and hours now where our energy mix is better than 50% renewable. If the wind's really blowing, we have about an average load of 300 megawatts. So when that 210 megawatts, which is primarily wind, is going strong, we'll see hours where we're 60% and our high day has been 56% renewable. So we're far and away the leader of modern renewables within the state, and we're really excited about what we have. They're both economic and obviously clean and green. So That's what I'm here to talk about. We also operate 1,600 miles of transmission line and 46 transmission stations on behalf of our members. What we've done in solar goes a little bit beyond community. And so it has its roots in community, and we built the Spartan Solar Array, as David mentioned, which is 1.2 megawatts. Any of our members can participate in that. So if you're a Cherryland member, if you're a Great Lakes member, if you're a Presque Isle member, it doesn't matter. You can participate on the same basis. And so what that upfront cost looks like is $600 for one panel subscription. There's a little over 4,500 panels in the array. And that's $600 up front, or you can pay $10 a month, free financing for 5 years. Then that charge goes away. Consumers Energy and their community program, you pay $10 forever and get your credit against that. Ours is only for 5 years and acts as free on-bill financing, if you will. So zero interest on that. And what you get paid back is 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So when you couple that upfront investment, if you invest up front, Cherryland here in the Grand Traverse area offers a $200 rebate based on energy efficiency, so that subscription's really $400, and our other members offer a $150 rebate on that upfront, so you can significantly reduce that. And we've had members subscribe for 15 panels to 20 panels. We have 3 members of Great Lakes Energy that have subscribed 20 panels in that community solar array. So far, so good on that. It went commercial in December. The other interesting piece that you could view it as community or individual solar, if you will, is what we call buy all, sell all. So you still buy all of your energy from your local distribution cooperative, but then we've issued a 10 megawatt standing offer that will be primarily filled by this buy all, sell all. So if you have a field or your roof and you want to install solar, you can do wind as well, or other small renewable generation. It's for renewables. If you want to install that, you can install it, and we will pay you for 20 years on contract, 10 cents per kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour produced. What you do is you continue to buy your energy from the co-op. So you have 2 meters, and that's the buy all, sell all. So you buy all your energy from the co-op, just as you do today, but you sell it all back to us at Wolverine, and so we buy that back. And that's important from my perspective, because it allows us to plan for what that generation looks like, how much solar is out on our system. We can understand what those production profiles are looking like, and we can take it into consideration in our capacity modeling, our energy modeling. It's much, much easier for us to plan for, and we feel like that's a very strong and a fair rate. So far, the engineers that I talked to at our member co-ops, I'm hearing anywhere from 2 to 2.5 megawatts, a couple of large arrays out there are under in the planning phases. Once you sign that contract, you need to have your array up in 6 months. So if you're thinking about it, if your friends are thinking about it, and you want to go in together, you can certainly do that. The only key restriction is that you're a member of one of those co-ops. So that's our buy all, sell all program. And then we have a standard net metering rate. It's 10 years and 5.6 cents for any production off of that array. So it's lower than the other two, but it's a challenge for us to plan for net metering. And the idea for net metering is you size it for your home, and you use that energy in your home. And so it's only the excess that comes back to us. And so we've worked hard with our members to be leaders in these 3 offerings, so that there's really a solar solution for anybody that wants to be involved in solar. If you want to do an array on your roof and offset your retail cost from your cooperative, you can do that with net metering, and you get paid what we believe to be a very fair rate. It's comparable with our energy charge for that net production. The buy all, sell all, if you want to do a larger installation yourself or with your neighbor and you're a member of the co-op, you can get a fair rate for 20 years. And then the other one is, as we're talking about today, community solar at either $10 a month for 5 years or $600 up front. Yes, sir.
On the option 3, how do you compute what of that is excess? Is that for hours, per day, for billing period?
It depends on our member and their metering sophistication. With Cherryland, they're actually metering, I'm using them as an example because they're local, they're metering it hourly. So they're looking at the hourly net. Each hour they can tell what power came in, what power went out, and giving credit on that basis. Some of our members don't have automated metering that's that sophisticated, so it settles out on a monthly basis, but that's what Cherryland is doing. Yes, sir.
How much is currently subscribed on the Vial-Cello under contract right now? Do you happen to know?
We have about 400 kilowatts subscribed in the buy all sell all so far. It's really interesting. I think there's a strong appetite for probably 3 megawatts right now. Talking to different members, there's projects that I'm hearing are under development from 250 kilowatts to, I feel really strongly that there are 2 megawatts out on 2 different member systems that will get built for sure. So that's what I know today. I don't know how widely people are aware of it and are getting ready to take advantage, but the hope would be we keep hearing per panel costs are coming down, and some of that will drive people to do more in 2018, 2019, that we'll get close to that full 10 megawatts. But I would say right now, feeling pretty good about 3 megawatts of the 10 will become subscribed in the next year.
I think what people are waiting for is the REAP grant announcements that are coming up in July and August.
Okay.
So I think there's megawatts in there probably altogether. So.
Great. If memory serves, I think that's all I have. That's right. Thanks.
And we'll have more time for question and answers at the end. Next, I'm inviting Sarah Molkoff up to tell you what she's been up to. I think I first met Sarah when she worked for the Michigan Environmental Coalition as their energy policy analyst, which meant she spent a whole lot of time in Lansing listening to Senate testimony and that sort of thing. Gave her a really strong background in energy policy and what's going on in energy in Michigan. She has recently moved over to the Michigan Energy Office, where she's actually a program manager there. I have known her 3-4 years, I don't know, a while. She's on the board of directors of Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association and has been really helpful in doing things like putting this conference together. She also manages, I work a community energy management program where we work with local governments to help them create energy plans, do master planning around energy, get energy audits of their buildings, implement energy saving and renewable energy programs. We do that in a number of communities around the state. Here in the Traverse City area, the nonprofit that works in that program is Seeds, that has been working with both Traverse City and Grand Traverse County. We've got Detroit and most of the Detroit area. We have the Lansing area. And Sarah is now kind of overseeing that program and helping us to succeed. And she's going to tell us what she's been up to.
Hi, everyone. Okay, good afternoon. Just wanted to start by thanking the invitation to be here at another Great Lakes Renewable Energy and Clean Energy Conference and Fair in Traverse City. I've been part of the fair for a number of years, so really happy to participate again. Let's get through the introduction just to review where we're coming from. Like Dave mentioned, currently I'm at the Michigan Energy Office, and so I just wanted to clarify, Michigan Energy Office is based within the Michigan Agency for Energy, a fairly newer agency, about 2 years old as of this May. And we act as the agency that supports policies around renewable energy and energy waste reduction in both the public and private sectors. And per the governor's agenda, promote solutions around energy that are adaptable, affordable, reliable, and protect the environment. And because we just recently worked on revamping our mission, I wanted to run through that real quickly as well. So the Michigan Energy Office, we just republished what our overall mission of what we do, and that's committed to promoting healthy communities, economic growth, and environmental sustainability through energy waste reduction and renewable energy. So the ways we do that, one, by engaging stakeholders on Michigan's energy future of programs and policies that advance to meet a combined 35% combined waste reduction and renewable energy goal by 2025. And so that's as effect of the new energy law that just came out in December of last year. Two, we're accelerating economic growth by encouraging investments to advance mobility. We talked about that a bit last night at the panel. Hope many of you were there. Advanced mobility, manufacturing, and healthy communities. Three, we participate in lead by example initiatives to encourage waste reduction and renewables through environmental sustainability. And four, we provide and support education to encourage energy literacy through a vibrant workforce. And five, encourage the use of transparency through energy data to make better energy decisions. Within our office, within our agency, here are a number of our divisions. The one I'm representing is, again, the Energy Office. So a lot of what we do is around programs and partnerships. We do some work with technical assistance with universities, incubators, such as this incubator, the National Energy Labs. And we do a lot with energy grants and loans, dollars directly from Department of Energy. And as Dave mentioned, one of my major programs is through community energy management, which we've been working up here in Traverse City with the city as well as the county on some of their goals to increase their renewable energy plans, and really proud of the successes here so far. We've got great partnerships with Groundwork Center and with Seeds. But the program I'm going to dive a little bit more into specifically, but related to community energy development, is around our partnership with a federal program called the Clean Energy for Low-Income Communities Accelerator. Just briefly, wanted to give an overview of some of the additional policies and programs in case some of you weren't in the last policy section earlier this morning. Here's a series of programs related to funding and financing solar in Michigan. Just will overview these briefly. The net metering program, there was a whole panel on that just this morning, but just wanted to note that the program I'm going to be talking about is virtual net metering, and so allowing customers to opt in to count generation from off-site solar as a discount on their utility bills. And the new legislation should allow for this, though a lot of the discussions are underway. A lot of discussions around new parts of the legislation are currently taking place through a series of work groups happening at the Public Service Commission, and you can find out more about that at michigan.gov/energy legislation. Community solar, I just wanted to, because the area I'm going to focus on in community solar is how to make this accessible for low-income communities particularly. It's come up through a couple of this morning's conversation of how do we make renewables accessible to all customer classes, and so wanted to focus a little bit more on low and moderate opportunities in Michigan. But by doing so, I wanted to highlight some of the other programs I know about in other states. So in Colorado, how they're taking on community solar, they have a Community Solar Act of 2010 that actually requires the developers to allocate 5% of all of their solar development to be specifically allocated for their low-income customer class. And similarly, in Minnesota, there's a coalition called the Just Community Solar Coalition that's customer-owned co-op through a series of nonprofits and churches that act as the anchor tenants. And they help distribute or get customers enrolled in community solar for their low to moderate income customers. There's a series of other policies that I think we might go into at the end if we have time, but I'm going to move on and talk about the Clean Energy for Low-Income Communities Accelerator Project. So this is something I'm really excited to participate in. This is, what the Accelerator Project is basically a partnership with the Department of Energy's Better Buildings program. It brings together about a dozen states that are collectively working on cracking this tough nut of how to expand solar into low-income communities. We know that low-income customers are struck by the energy burden, so a disproportionate amount of their income goes towards paying their utility bills. Most households pay, most low-income families spend 2 to 3 times amount than average on their utility bills. And so the accelerator is aiming to find solutions that help lower the cost by innovative solutions to enroll folks into these programs. And so through a series of partnerships, we're just starting to launch a program that could allow for pilot virtual net metering. So customers from low-income parts of the state to enroll into basically a discounted rate of electricity through different utility models. Just talking more about those customers who are affected. Again, the definition that we're using here, we're not even really referring much to moderate income folks. We're using low income because we're very closely paired with the LIHEAP programs and the Customer Service Division in Michigan. So the folks that are enrolled in direct energy assistance heating dollars. And so we're looking at the low-income customers that qualify at 150% at or below the federal poverty line. So through doing this, my agency, May, is partnering with the customer service folks that I mentioned who run the MEEP programs, the Michigan Energy Assistance Programs, along with, through the Department of Health and Human Services, the WAP program. That's where Weatherization Assistance Program is housed. And so we're designing a program that isn't just about providing a discounted clean energy through community solar program, but making it more encompassing with weatherization. And so kind of marrying together the energy waste reduction opportunities with clean energy to create more of a holistic solutions for these low-income customers to enroll and get on a path towards energy self-sufficiency and less reliance on needing the direct assistance dollars. So how are we doing that? We've got these great federal partners through the National Renewable Energy Lab and the Department of Energy that kind of help provide peer learning circles and technical assistance. There's great modeling tools about how to build out new models, where things are at price parity, and how to do a lot of the math to project the payoff for these models and some of the qualifications for which customers could most benefit. So the idea of this project is to do 3 pilot projects in 3 different communities of different utility types. 1, an investor-owned utility, so either a DTE service territory or consumers. 2, a municipal-owned, and 3, a co-op-owned. We talked about doing about 50 homes, 50 households in each of those, so 150 households touch total during the first year of this program. And for a duration of about 18 months, 12 months to 18 months. And during that time, we would enroll them into basically a special rate through community solar that's paid down by some of the program costs. And so they get enrolled into a discounted program that also requires them to do energy efficiency improvements in their home. So next I'll go through kind of how would we bring people into this. And so there'd have to be certain criteria. And that's where some of our partnerships with those that do direct weatherization assistance program work, the community action agencies and so forth, they help, they're already working with a number of these customers to do weatherization services. So we'd find these customers that are income qualified at or below the federal level, those that are already enrolled in their energy optimization services that their local utility provides, those that have received the LIHEAP assistance dollars in the past year and have a consistent bill payment history. And then the metrics over the course, we'd benchmark it at the beginning among several of these criteria and then over the course of the year to determine if we're reducing their electricity consumption, decreasing their annual dollars spent towards electricity, decreased enrollment in the LIHEAP programs, using the energy optimization dollars, and then the non-energy benefits, so the health impacts of sealing their homes and making their homes more efficient, and then, as I mentioned, the path towards the economic and energy self-sufficiency. So they don't need to rely on this rebated program every year. Perhaps they are enrolled for 1 or 2 years and get on a path towards their home is more energy efficient overall, and therefore they're able to pay their bills without the assistance. So how are we doing this? This is where a lot of the partnerships come in. I mentioned some of the federal and state partners, but we're at a really exciting stage where we've been talking to potential utilities to work with. from each of those municipal, co-op, and investor-owned utilities about scoping out areas for engagement, about where they've already been touching and doing weatherization work, and how to build off those programs. So it's a very new project. We've just been a couple months in, and so it's been a lot of baseline research and background work in the potential areas thus far. But over the next couple months, we will be rolling out an RFP, a request for proposals, for utilities to offer this type of program, this low-income net metering carve-out for low-income customers. And so we'll be working on that, and then there'll be a lot of data collection and work within these households. And again, that's where our local partnerships with the community action agencies, with the nonprofits, with the energy efficiency providers comes in. So the customers who are receiving the benefits, they're involved with the community, and they know the local resource coming in and helping them. And then the enrollment period will continue over the next year as we benchmark this program, and after an 18-month pilot program, we could choose to replicate it. And so, again, it's very new. I just wanted to introduce it. We're having exciting talks so far locally in this area with the Cherryland Electric Co-op, and very excited about potentially adding on to the great work that Zach just described at Wolverine with the Spartan Solar Project. And then the last couple steps here, again, the federal partners at DOE provide us these great technical resources, and one of them is this tool called SAM, Systems Advisor Model. And so it's a spreadsheet-based tool that helps us put inputs in for describing a model of size and scale and types of families and types of incomes and households that we're trying to benefit to determine the financial longevity of the programs, and then ultimately how the program could transfer from being hosted by an investor, an anchor tenant, if it could later be invested back towards as a community asset, so to the municipality or to a nonprofit that essentially owns the community solar for the rest of the project. So if you want more info on that, you can follow up with me, and I can give you the webinar info. That's next week. But really stay tuned. We're going to be engaging more stakeholder work on the ground in different communities of the state that we're starting to select over the next few months over the summer here. Those are just a couple of, there's been numerous great resources on, again, cracking this nut of how do we help low-income communities enroll into community solar. So the Better Buildings program that I mentioned a few times that's sponsoring this Celica work, they have all of their presentations from past conferences listed online. A great website there. The Clean Energy States Alliance published a really great report recently on the benefits of solar to low-income customers. That's available online. And then the Sunshine Initiative, Dan Worth mentioned it this morning that Traverse City is also a Sunshot partner on bringing solar to low-income communities. And they're working on that here in Traverse City. So we're kind of tied into some of those partnerships I just wanted to mention. And that's the end of my slides. But I know we're going to conclude here and then have a Q&A period. Thank you.
I think it's great that we try to pay attention to including low income in solar, and really that was part of the goal in community solar, was to make it more affordable for everyone. So if you're a renter or you can't, an average solar energy system in Michigan nowadays for your house costs $15,000 to $20,000. People don't necessarily have that kind of money to invest, but community solar, the whole idea was to make it affordable. So how are we doing in Michigan, and how does that compare to some of the states where it's really working well? You saw that graph in the beginning where community solar is taking off. Well, in Michigan, I neglected to tell you that maybe 4 or 5 years ago I was hired by the State Energy Office to produce a guide to community solar for Michigan. And at the time I wrote that guide, Cherryland was during the writing of that guide was when Cherryland started the absolute first community solar. So I've kind of taken it upon myself to follow what's going on in Michigan and where we're at with community solar. And this graph you see is it's brand new to everybody. And it really is, it's not a perfect way to compare community solar, as it says back on the bottom. I'm assuming a 3% annual electric cost inflation, which is probably low. It's been more like 5% over the last 5 years. Otherwise, some of the programs just don't offer an inflation factor over time for electricity, or they have a set one. And it's a simple analysis. It's not real sophisticated. But like I said, Consumers Energy has actually 4 different payment plans. They have an upfront payment plan where you pay $1,339 for your 500 watt share, a 3-year plan where you end up paying a little more because you're paying for it over time, a 7-year plan, a little more yet, and then the 25-year plan, what I got, where I just pay $10 a month no matter what. What you see is the cost per watt. What I did is take this cost, what did you pay for your share, how many watts of production? This is 500 watts of solar production, and then the amount of sunshine. If the sun's shining fully, you'll get 500 watts for that period that it's shining fully, but whatever. And that comes out to about, it varies of course, $2.68 for the upfront payment, $2.88 for the 3-year payment, and on down. And then finally, what they're going to pay you for the electricity, they said 7.5 cents for the first 5 years, and then it'll go up at a market rate, which I chose to be 3%. And then how long? 25 years. And then it's a simple payback. If you just put all this into a spreadsheet, how much did you pay up front? How much are you going to get paid back? How many kilowatt hours will this 500 watts make over the course of the year? And you multiply it by what they're going to pay you for that kilowatt hour. It'll give you a simple payback period. And in this case, 20 years. It's a 25-year contract. In 20 years, it will have paid for itself. The last 5 years is profit. This is the Consumers Energy if you buy it up front, and then it goes up to 21 years. 24 years, or for my $10 a month, isn't going to work. That's not really how community solar should work. So before we look at the rest of these are the critical components in a community solar program. You want to know how big is your share, how much are you going to be paying per watt for your share. And if you look down here, you'll see anywhere from $2.68, $1.68 for the Cherryland Original, $1.55 at Homeworks, $1.33 at Lansing Board and Water and Light, $1.59 at Marquette's program, $1.79 at Spartan Solar, and there was one that Laketown did we're not even going to talk about because it wasn't real. It was $2.60. But these are, I want to go through all these. The size of the program, 4,000 kW so far, 4 megawatts for community Consumers Energy, can go up to 10 kW. Cherryland did 53 kW, big size difference. Homeworks, less than half of that. Lansing Board and Water and Light, 300. Marquette, 151. The new Spartan Solar Zach talked about, 1.2 megawatts. The size of your share varies. Anywhere from a low of 275 watts up to a high of 500 watts. The cost per share, it's more important to look at what the cost per watt was. The cost per watt varies across these programs from a high of, $6 a watt for the program I joined into, down to a low of $1.33 at Lansing Board and Water and Light. What are they going to pay? What are they going to pay you for each kilowatt hour? Anywhere from 7.5 cents for Consumers Energy to start and then inflates. 7.8 cents at Cherryland and follows the market. It's up about 8.4 or 5 now after 3 or 4 years. Homeworks, the same thing. They started at 8.4 and follows the market. Lansing Board and Water and Light started at 6.4 and just said, we're going to inflate at 2.36% every year for the full 25 years of the contract. Marquette Solar started at 0.63 and they're not going to inflate it. They're going to just leave it there. Spartan Solar says we're going to pay you 10 cents and there's no inflation factor, so for the life of the contract, 15 years, they're going to pay you 10 cents. When we look at, and then finally you can come up with this, how long are they? 25 years for most of them, 20 years for some. The Spartan one is 15. This is your investment. These are the numbers that are important in evaluating that investment. So any of these that pay that are 25 years long and pay for themselves in less than their period, you're going to make money eventually, not right away, but you're going to make money. You can use this number on the end, the 2022, the 15 years for Homeworks, the 15 years for Lansing Board and Water and Light, the 15 years for Spartan, to say, well, you know, that's pretty reasonable investment. The deal with the Spartan Solar is that it's a 15-year lease. It'll pay for itself in 15 years, and if you read their contract document, or actually their frequently asked questions, somebody asked, well, what happens after 15 years? And the answer on the website is, well, I don't know, we might negotiate something further. You know, but the idea, you know, if they would have made this 25 years, then for 15 years you would have had it paid off, and for the next 10 years you'd be making money on your investment. So I showed all this to my wife and said, this is kind of what it looks like. And she said, boy, that doesn't look all that great. You know, and quite frankly, a lot of people have been disappointed in a solar investment is it doesn't make you rich real fast. There isn't any, you know, if you put it on your house, and I built one on my house, I think it's going to pay for itself in about 15 years. Some of these are fairly reasonable. Could they be better? Well, my point is going to be that they can be. So there's an organization called the Solar Electric Power Association that did a big document examining community solar across the United States. And they said that the utilities are now starting to take the lead in the spread of community solar, giving everybody access to clean power. And the important piece of this, state mandates have been an important driver in the initiation and speed of community solar programs to date. Of the 57 utility community solar programs that we track, 31 are in states that have community solar legislation, like Colorado. What happens, and I've worked with lots of community churches, community groups, whatever, that want to do a community solar project in Michigan, and the problem is the law does not allow you, unless you're a utility company, to sell energy across a property border. So if you had a church group and you wanted to put solar collectors on the roof of the church and have members of the church all contribute to purchasing that and get payback from that, it would not be legal. It is not legal in the state of Michigan. What Sarah is talking about is big. What she said, the word she said was virtual net metering. Virtual net metering is legal in a lot of the states out east, and what that means is that you can build a system in one location and have people get virtual net metering, virtually as if it was in their own yard, and get credit for the power produced from the collectors they own at their own house, even though it's across a property line. So we're wishing her all the best luck to establish maybe a little bit of virtual net metering, which is a piece of what we need to do to be able to have successful community solar in Michigan. So here's where community solar policies are in place up here: Minnesota, Colorado, California, Oregon. These ones out east, most of that's virtual net metering laws that just allow you to build something in your neighborhood and everybody can participate in it. Michigan is not in that. This next one, it's a little hard to read, has numbers. How many community solar projects are there in each of these states? In Michigan, it lists, I don't even know, 2. There's way more than that. But it's 48 in Colorado, 11 in Minnesota, some double figures over here. But basically, again, the point is, if a state has come and done some enabling policies for community solar, it takes off and is big-time business, and solar grows very rapidly. So the Colorado Community Solar Gardens Act in 2012, excellent language. It is in the public interest that broader participation in solar electric generation by Colorado residents and commercial entities be encouraged by the development and deployment of distributed solar electric generating facilities known as community solar. That was in their act. They said it's in our own public good to allow community solar. What did they do? They said that all qualifying retail utilities shall set forth plans to pay for renewable energy resources and purchase that electricity and renewable energy credits generated from the community solar gardens. And the purchase and output of those community solar gardens shall be in the form of net metering. In other words, If I'm paying 15 cents like I am for energy, they're going to pay me 15 cents for energy, any solar energy that comes back. So if you remember what we saw, you know, the 10 cents that was coming from Wolverine was a really nice, the highest payment we saw paying back. Well, net metering's 15 cents. So just with this bill saying utilities, you must buy the power from any community solar project that's built in a net metering format led to the following. This is Clean Energy Collective. It's one of the bigger community solar developers. They do work in Colorado, which is right here, but they have done some other projects now in other states. But they have 32 projects, 16.7 megawatts of community solar in Colorado as we speak. They've done these, and they have a whole bunch more in the pipeline, and because of that development, they've now been able to export their business to other states and work in Minnesota out east, some in Texas, whatever. So we have, if you added up all the megawatts of community solar we currently have going in Michigan, it's 5.6. This one company in Colorado has done 16.7. In 2000, I want to make sure I didn't skip one here. Yep, all right. In 2013, the Minnesota legislation passed a law enabling community solar projects to start moving forward, and they said that the utility has to buy that energy at the value of solar rate. And this was a rate to be determined. They put together a committee that looked at all kinds of environmental and energy supply costs and whatever to come up with a number. The local utilities estimated that it would probably be about 20 megawatts of community solar projects, and right now they're at 414, a little bit off, and Xcel Energy, which is the main company operating in Minnesota, has 1,003 more projects in the line in Minnesota. And when I talk about projects, this is what we like about community solar. The Bethel Lutheran Church here is putting solar collectors on their church. It's a little 36 kW system, but it's enabled by this legislation. It's legal, and it makes financial sense because they have to pay the value of solar rate. What's happened with value of solar in Minnesota was that it came out so high that the utilities are paying net metering instead. But net metering is still good enough to make these projects work. This is just another example of a commercial kitchen in this industrial park that's supplying energy to all the other businesses around it. They've all become members, bought into that solar energy system. So I called up. I wanted to find out how this works in Minnesota. I wasn't able to get anything that fits onto my graph because it's so different. But this is off of one of the websites. It's option 1, subscription pay-as-you-go. And what they just say is the monthly payment for our program is lower than the credits you're going to get on your bill. Let that digest a minute. This rate will increase slowly, meaning you will generate more savings over time as electric prices rise. Basically, you pay us $10 and we'll credit you for $12, and that $12 will go up over time. So from day one, what they do in Minnesota is these projects, you have to be within the region, within 20 miles of where those collectors go in. And as soon as a project is announced and they put out the word, people subscribe and they sell out pretty much like a rock concert, an hour, 3 hours, whatever, because the minute you buy your share, you save money. And so one example they put right on their website is for a $100 a month electric bill, over the course of 25 years, you're going to make $6,000. This is community solar in a state where the legislation has been passed. It's set some rules on how you do it, and this is how come it's exploding. Now, that's not happening in Michigan. We kind of know that, so what do we need? What we need is mandates. This again, I'm going right back to the Solar Energy Power Association in that quote. State mandates have been an important driver in the initiation and spread of community solar programs to date. In Michigan, what we have is a utility law that says you cannot sell electricity across a property border unless you are a utility company. So that kills all the small little church programs and whatever. And it does not mandate the utilities to offer community solar. and it does not set a value of solar or a price for that solar. But the minute you do those things, you end up with a scenario like Colorado, like Minnesota. So at Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, we will continue to try to work to get some form of enabling legislation, some rulemaking put in that will allow community solar to succeed in Michigan. Right now, we have a few projects. You will notice that virtually all of them, except Consumers Energy, are rural cooperatives or municipal utilities that are not controlled by Michigan Public Service Commission rules, and they're able to make their own programs, and to a large extent have been very successful. What we're looking for is something better. And now we will open it up for discussion. Yes?
Okay, all right. So within the Michigan community programs, and some of these are 25 years, right? What happens if you move out of region before the lease period is over?
It's all covered in contractual documents. In virtually every case, you are allowed to try to sell them to somebody else, or in most cases, the utility will buy it back from you. You just walk away when you're done where you are. You are allowed to sell it to somebody else in the territory, in many of them also. The Consumers Energy one, you can just stop at any time you want. Yes, Zach.
I can speak to ours. There's no penalty. So if you move, we take what you paid in, less your credits, and give you all your money back. So it's meant to be, there's no out-of-pocket penalty for moving. If you move within the territory, so it touches all 5 of our members. So if you were to move from Traverse City down to Cassopolis, you could take your community solar credit with you and transfer it to the other co-op. But if you're leaving the co-op, we offer a full refund with no penalty.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like the upfront program. You put all your money in, now you move out, they can't
Right.
give you a credit on your bill. And I guess the answer is you can sell it back to them for who knows how much.
I
or
think
sell it to
it
somebody else
differs
if you can
between
find
the
the buyer.
utilities, but as much as it looks like the Michigan program's not working very well and whatever, I will tell you that GLREA worked. We were at the table with consumers trying to put together a proposal for the Michigan Public Service Commission, and they are so limited by a whole lot of rules on how they can finance things and whatever that they've done the best they can. And I think in all of these, there's a fair way of getting out of it. You're not going to get ripped off in any of these programs left high and dry. What consumers need also to do a successful, popular community solar program is some enabling legislation.
David, just like to make a friendly clarification on the example with churches, that it is true that you can't put a big solar array on a church and they can sell the power to the congregant members. However, it is very possible for churches to take tax-deductible charitable contributions, like the ones you make every year, take that money and buy a solar panel with it instead, use that energy at a rate lower than what they pay for the utility power, and the savings, they turn around and take that money and spend it on programs that you would normally have given them money to support anyway, like whatever those programs are. So I think it depends on how you define community and how you structure the project. So you're right, churches can't put up arrays and sell the power, but they can use that power within the community to support the community. So I wouldn't want to give people the wrong idea that churches aren't a viable way to get around all the lack of leadership and legislation. And there is a lack of leadership and legislation, and churches are one of the examples of how you can actually get around it and do the right thing regardless of what the leadership wants us to do.
So I've been asked to ask the audience a number of questions. I think the first one is, anybody belong to a community solar program? And so how's it going? How do you feel about it?
Is it on? I have 5 solar panels over at Cherryland. I started out buying 3, and then I wanted more. And then that wasn't enough, so I bought solar at my house as well. So my last electric bill with everything was $4.44, and I was very disappointed. I was hoping it would be negative something. But I like the idea of community solar because not everybody can have solar at your house. I mean, if your roof structure isn't ideal for it, you have shading issues, you don't have the property to put a solar array on. It is ideal. I mean, if you want to, make a statement about that you care about the environment, so it's not always about just how much money you're going to make off of it. It's a bigger picture than that.
Okay.
So I do like the community solar gardens. I like the opportunity of it. But you can also buy it at your home, and you create a little bit more discount on your electric bill that way.
Okay. Anybody else belong to community solar programs at the moment? All right. What would you say? Is there something that could be better about the community solar program you belong to?
After the time frame is up, I mean, so I think with Cherryland, is it 20?
It's 25 years.
5 years? That's really good. I think with the new one, with that being only 15 years, you do not own that panel after 15 years. The co-op owns it, but the beauty is that it's a co-op, so then that panel belongs to everybody. So you get the benefit of it for the first 15 years, but then everybody else does. So you might barely get your payback in 15 years. I don't know. I haven't really calculated the numbers. My average, in the summertime, I'm getting a credit for 5 panels. I'm probably getting about $3, a little over $3 per panel. In the wintertime, I might be only getting, 15 cents for all 5. So, and then you got to keep them cleaned off. They got to keep the snow cleaned off of them in the wintertime.
Just to be clear, the Cherryland is a 10-year payback because it's $400, not $600 for the panels. So we do solar installations, and anytime there's a bad site, we simply recommend you get a 10-year payback with the Cherryland program. Now, I know that the other co-ops don't give that $200 credit. 150? Yeah. So it's still... on residential, it's tough to get a 10-year payback, and you get it for doing nothing with Cherryland.
That's an excellent point, and I forgot to mention, Zach mentioned that, I just took numbers off their website, but the various co-ops are giving discounts, which make it a much better payback than what's on my, I'm going to correct my spreadsheet.
But Dave, to add on, the benefits, of course, of customers opting into community solar, again, for the customers I was talking about, the low to moderate income folks, this provides an opportunity for those that don't have an ideal house. Maybe they don't own their house, or maybe they're part of a multifamily or apartment unit, or maybe their conditions aren't right. But I think the community solar options provide the options for people without the adequate, housing set up to opt in. And, I don't know how much of that has caught on through the current systems, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow as the programs continue to develop.
Well, and that's one I would put that as good. Now remember, 4 years ago when I wrote the guidebook for community solar, there were no community solar programs in Michigan. Now there are 7, and some of them are pretty darn large, so that opportunity is out there. It could be better if they could pay a little more per kilowatt hour credit or whatever, but at least that option is there, exactly as Sarah says, for people who, for whatever reason, can't build solar on their own property.
Yeah, so I'm not a community solar owner, but you asked the question, what would make it better? And it seems to me an obvious question is, what is it about our regulatory environment that doesn't allow competition across the utilities so that I, as a citizen, could look at all the programs out there and simply choose the one that's most advantageous for me?
That's it. I love that. Because
do we
it has
have an
been,
answer?
boy, the strictest law in Michigan, utility law, is that they drew these boundaries like between Consumers Energy and DTE, and they just are not allowed to compete with each other across that boundary. But in something like a community solar program, I like that. You know?
So you're saying there's state legislation that prevents it?
I'd say the state legislation, I mean, Michigan is a primarily regulated district, so 90% of customers are required to go into their incumbent power utility. They're usually a DTE or Consumers Energy. So 90% of customers must opt into that, but 10% of customers are allowed to buy through the alternative electric supplier system. But that rate is generally more reserved for the larger commercial and industrial customer classes. So yeah, the law does require that you stick with your incumbent utility as a residential customer.
Well, I get that when we look at the old model for utilities where they were putting infrastructure in and, decades-long investments. But in this new environment, community solar, far smaller investment, but they set up a set of metrics. Why can't we just put that much out there on the market and let the consumer vote with their feet? I don't see why the old model has to automatically be our new model.
Right. Well.
I have just a clarification on this one. Wayne Appleyard and myself, we're both on the Ann Arbor Energy Commission, and while it's true, the utilities, you can't compete in Michigan, as a city, we've had several large developers, Arcadia and Geothermal to mention two, that do large community solar programs around the United States, and they're basically willing to come into Ann Arbor, and they don't come into Michigan because the rates are so heavily subsidized here. You can't make any money doing these kind of community solar programs here. That's why they have to be grossly subsidized. But they're saying to people in Ann Arbor, community solar is about an investment and about doing the right thing and about buying green power. So through us, you can buy into a solar array in state of Washington or some other state in northern Michigan, et cetera, where the rates are considerably higher, and we will work out a deal with your utility, DTE or Consumers and Energy, et cetera, where we will credit this on your energy bill. So take the same money, I buy into a community solar program in another state, and that savings is credited on my DTE energy bill, and it is legal. So community solar works well, and you can invest in community solar tomorrow, and you can make money on it tomorrow. You just can't do it if you buy a community solar program in the state of Michigan. And that's the sad part of it again, but leadership is not limited by geographic boundaries, and there are people who are doing this. And if you're interested, Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association could talk to you about it, or Wayne or either I would be able to put you in touch with people that you can look at now, or just go on GeoStellar's website and look at their system, and there's community solar programs you can buy into this afternoon.
Over here. This question is, I think, more along the lines for Sarah. The low-income weatherization program, I've been associated with that for a long time. The thing I've noticed is a lot of those people who are signed up for that program are renting their house. So is there, in part of that pilot program you're talking about, is there anything that's incentivizing the landlord to buy into a community solar program?
Yeah, for the pilot project so far, we're just looking at, That's a great question. So initially, we're mostly trying to work with customer-owned houses to be enrolled with this phase of it. The landlord-tenant issue is a huge one too that we're kind of exploring through the multifamily angle of it as well. And so if a building owner could incentivize to put money collected from the rents into buying into that array to collectively benefit all of their tenants, that would be an ideal model. So far, the phase that we're in is really just for houses that are owned. not rented, but that's where working directly with the weatherization partners and those that better understand the demographics of the houses that need this kind of work. That's where we'll kind of learn more about how to incentivize that and make it a better investment for the landlord to invest into too. Because what you're suggesting is an ideal model, certainly, to improve like the long-term efficiency of that home and trying to get the tenants to stay in it for longer and ultimately pay it off over time. So I think there's a lot to explore with that. But initially with the pilot program just hitting 50-some households, it's probably more the owned buildings which they intend to stay in.
Yes, is there anything on the horizon for residential energy storage that would make going off the grid more feasible?
It's a sort of a different question. However, absolutely, of course, battery storage is the new big thing. I was at a bid opening for a solar energy system at a local government, and before the bid opening, there were 10 solar installers anxiously awaiting the results. But they were all talking about batteries. That's what they're excited about. It's a new and coming world. There was some talk about the Upper Peninsula in an earlier, where the electric prices are very high in some places. A study was done by Michigan Tech on the cost of completely going off grid with solar and found it to be about 34 cents a kilowatt hour. If your rates ever get that high, you can pay at current prices, go off the grid with battery storage and live that way. Right now we're seeing prices at about 28 cents a kilowatt hour in some places in the Upper Peninsula. So I love this, that the utilities have to be aware that as electric prices go up and as solar and battery prices go down, options, even though they have a monopoly, options are starting to come up, and a lot of people are choosing, just to go off grid because they just don't want to buy from their utility company anymore. But the answer to that is absolutely. The times they are a-changing. The question about ancient utility laws is perfect. We're watching the state of New York go through a total revamp of how utilities operate in their state. In Michigan, we went through a 3-year new energy planning process that basically left us where we are now, and we had to fight to get that. We were going to go backwards without the fight. We held our ground, and we've managed to keep net metering and keep a renewable portfolio standard and a few other things. But the progressive states are looking for a whole new model of how utilities work in the state, and I thought the presentation this morning from Green Mountain Power just shows you what is possible if the utility decides that they really want to work with their clients and bring renewable energy to their state. And community solar, again, I put this slide back up because personally, I'm not going to be happy with community solar in Michigan until that church group doesn't have to go through machinations, because that neighborhood group can just choose to all invest in something in the park over there and share in the cost and share in the profits. That's true community solar. It's small scale, local renewable energy. It's possible to do, but unfortunately, we need to change the laws to do it.
I had 2 unrelated questions right over here. One, is anybody doing community wind? Is that a thing? And 2, unrelated, I'm wondering, so currently within a given utility, there's only a certain percentage of distributed generation allowed. Is that right? Where exactly, where does that rule sit? And who do we have to talk to change that piece? Is that a PSC thing? Is that a legislative thing?
So first I'm going to go to your second question first. You said distributed generation. I think you meant competition. Distributed generation is just other people. What we have now in Michigan is utilities have a monopoly.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about distributed generation.
Okay, well, there isn't a limit. There's-
Rooftops.
For the net metering. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a 1% cap at the moment for net metering, which nobody is anywhere near, except for one.
I
yeah,
think
okay.
folks up with the UP
One-
are.
there's one utility that's
Yeah.
actually but if you're talking about Consumers Energy or DTE, they're not even close to 10% of that cap at the moment. And one of the things they were going to generously do in this new energy plan was raise that cap, since they were, all of that is legislated. Go ahead. You know more than she knows more than I do.
Well, as far as your question as who to talk to, I mean, I think the timing is really pertinent because a lot of the discussions about the new distributed generation program, which I think you appropriately named it, net metering is being changed to being called distributed generation with the new law that passed at the end of last year. So discussions on that and a series of about 15 other work groups are taking place through the Michigan Public Service Commission. And just earlier today, there was a policy discussion on that. And Julie Baldwin, who leads the Renewable Energy Division there at the PSC, they were taking comments on issues related to the new distributed generation program, and will continue to throughout this year. So there's a website to get involved with that group or any of the other work groups at michigan.gov/energy legislation. And then as far as community wind, do you? Oh, go ahead.
What does that mean? Right. But that's not community solar. So how is it community wind? I mean, I showed you some of the pricings on, where you could get for 1 cent a kilowatt, you could get wind and geothermal power. But that, the definition of community solar needs to be that you invest in it, you get a certain share of the production based on your investment, and that ideally it inflates over time with the cost of energy and has a payback to it. These green energy programs, which were mandated by the latest energy plan, and that's why we're starting to see them from new ones from consumers and DTE, those are simply pay a premium and encourage renewable energy. That is not community solar.
So what was it about wind?
That I don't know. There certainly isn't any community wind in Michigan. There may be. I would try Iowa would be a good place that might actually have it. It's not a bad idea. I remember Zach might know.
I think there's been a couple of things on community wind and why it hasn't taken off. One, wind in Michigan is less than half the cost of solar. So solar has needed, historically, at its current efficiency, a little bit of a leg up and community involvement to get it off the ground because of the economics, where the drivers for RPS standards and the economics of wind have driven utility companies to do it at a really good price, and so there hasn't been a need for large-scale community participation in wind projects. The second question you asked about where we can go with the MPSC, well, the MPSC, they oversee Detroit Edison and consumers' energy primarily. What we're doing at co-ops and what you can do with your co-op is get involved and talk about where you want to see the policy go. Because what we've done on net metering with our buy all, sell all, and with our community is we've far exceeded that 1% cap that is out there. And if member demand continues to move us in that direction, if that's what our members want to do and that's what makes sense for the cooperative, we'll continue to go down those paths. So take advantage of the local control and be involved in your co-op and tell us what you're looking for in your renewable mix, and we'll continue to explore opportunities to do it. Since I haven't been up here in a minute, I did want to talk about battery storage as well. At a residential scale, the Tesla Powerwall is probably the most economic thing that's out there. It's not incredibly economic at the current rates unless you are in the UP, and it's still a little bit more expensive than that. But at utility scale, we're looking at it more and more and more, especially to pair with renewables. When you're talking about a solar project, can you do a battery system that can charge up well, the sun's shining and you maybe don't need it, or take advantage of negative pricing driven by wind overnight and fill that battery to help supplement solar and get a steady balance of energy. Those costs are really coming down, and as the technology improves, we'll continue to look at opportunities to expand storage. And I think that's just, again, it's an all of the above strategy. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you we don't need fossil resources, we don't need nuclear, any of those traditional resources that we've had to balance out the grid, but also understand solar and storage are going to become more and more a part of what we do as solar becomes more efficient and batteries become more cost effective.
On the community solar partnership program, the 50 home criteria, is that single family homes or can it be a mixed situation? As an example, I'm working on a project that would have single family homes, fourplexes, an apartment building, and a community resource center. Is that something that could qualify for a partnership?
Great question, and it's a great opportunity. So the program's really new as we're designing it. Initially, we're thinking about individual homes that are owned by individual households, families. That's probably going to be more likely to fit into the models where they're buying into a current community solar that exists. There's a lot more opportunity that we're exploring in more densely populated areas downstate. So we're looking through a lot of models that they're considering in Detroit to get multifamily and mixed types of use buildings to opt into a community solar opportunity. We're a few steps behind than we are with the muni and the co-op models that are more aimed at the single family homes. But I think there's a lot of opportunity, and building off of this gentleman's question about the tenant versus the tenant versus landlord ownership model of who invests in it, I think those are all kind of under exploration too. We know that a higher proportion of the low to moderate income communities might be in these mixed types of housing units. So it really depends on if we're talking about the muni and co-op types of models versus the investor owned. But I think there's good opportunity there. Can I ask where you're thinking of the development or where you're working on?
We have a property in Highland Park. Mm-hmm. And some of the properties have already been purchased, and we're putting together the energy analytics and all of that kind of stuff. So when you mentioned the partnership, mm-hmm. we're already talking to different people about, possibilities. I mean, that sounded like a fantastic opportunity, because what we're doing is utility scale. Mm-hmm. And I know that if we put, examples in the properties that we have, mm-hmm. there's a high probability that everyone around there might sign up for that. So even though I think, we're not just single family, mm-hmm. we might qualify for the 50, mm-hmm. and it will probably wind up with like 150.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great, and I'd love to follow up with you more about that. Again, how customers would qualify, we'd work with the local partners on the ground that know the community the best, the nonprofits, the community action agencies that have been doing weatherization work in those communities too. And so I think there's definitely opportunity there. The other thing I wanted to clarify early on with the whole concept of the virtual net metering pilot programs is that these would all be utility owned. And so this is a model that we'd work hand in hand partnership with the utilities to do basically a carve out rate from part of their existing community solar project to provide a rate for low to moderate income customers. And so in other words, it's a discounted electricity rate if you're doing all this other energy optimization and weatherization on those homes as well. So I just wanted to clarify what I'd been discussing for the pilot models, those are all utility owned as well.
Yes.
Okay. My turn? Just to address the wind, the federal tax credit for wind expired at last year, and I haven't installed wind in quite a while. Wind is very difficult to scale. Solar is very easy to scale. As far as batteries, our clients for off-grid solar, most of my clients are in the UP because of the electric rates. But as far as going to like the Tesla Powerwall, that product is basically for the Hawaii, Puerto Rico, California market where they're trying to help span the time of day use, not for off-grid. Powerwall is about 400 amp hours. I have a client in the UP who needs a 4,000 amp hour battery to live off-grid, okay? It's not to say lithium will come, but right now, because of cell monitoring and the issue of thermal runaway, you don't see a 4,000 amp hour lithium ion battery pack rated for residential use. I would never put that, I'd put it in an outbuilding. I would never be installing a lithium battery pack as part of the residential system. So as far as off-grids, our off-grid systems are in the UP because of the electric rates, and we're still using lead acid batteries for that in order to get the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 amp hour ratings in order for someone to live off-grid with an on-grid lifestyle. Okay, we've passed the off-grid hippies. We're now into the middle to upper middle income clients who will not live an energy managed off-grid lifestyle. No, they won't. So just a heads up there.
Thank you. Okay. So he merely seconded that his experience is the same. We are out of time, so I would like to thank our presenters.